Imagine you're on one knee looking up at the person you want to spend the rest of your life with, waiting for them to say yes to your question, will you marry me? This can be one of the most exciting times in your life. I know it was for me to say yes to the person that I wanted to marry. But a question that follows right after is, when's the big day? And before you can even begin to plan that, you need to just start planning the little things, the smaller things, like, your budget, who you're going to have there, all that good stuff. And with that being said, my name is Patrice Wadley, and I'll be speaking about how to or what to expect when you're planning a wedding. When I first got engaged, I wanted to plan right away. I couldn't understand why people would spend so much money on a wedding planner. I soon realized what the money was for. I mean, my planning process would have been a lot easier had I just hired someone, but I didn't. Instead, I got one of these, a wedding planning book, which really comes in handy. It just kind of keeps in line, what you're supposed to do in certain times. And just different things come in this book to help you keep on the right track. So, I want to start off with budget. Budget should be your number one priority. When you pick a budget, stay with it. If you budgeted for $5,000, you need to make sure that your guest list, your vendors, your dress, your groomsmen attire, all that fall underneath that budget. But when you also pick your budget, you need to remember that location matters. Someone living in the Midwest might have a different budget than someone living on the East Coast or the West Coast because prices are different. They might be a little bit cheaper than living in the city. If anyone is helping you to pay for your wedding, there's a saying that I've heard quite a few times in the wedding community, and that is no pay, no say. If no one is helping you to financially foot the bill for this wedding, then they do not have a say in what you do. There's a lot of pressure from family, you should have an extraordinary wedding. It needs to be big and bling. But again, if they're not contributing, don't listen to any of that. You do what is best for your budget. After budgeting comes your vendors. You need to pick who you're going to have to be your DJ, your photographer, your videographer, who does your flowers, who bakes your cake, all of this good stuff. So again, back to the budget, which we'll be going back to plenty of times in this speech. You need to keep all that in mind. It's probably not a good idea to have a $5,000 wedding and $2,000 of your budget goes towards your dress, or $1,000 towards your DJ. You need to pick something that's within your limits. When you're doing your vendors, it's important to remember your attire. Of course, the wedding dress is normally the number one, attire that people think about when they go to the wedding. But keep in mind that you need tuxes for your groomsmen, for your groom. You need to think about bridesmaids dresses, flower girl dresses, ring bearer suits. All that comes into play with your vendors. Actually, another thing about vendors is you need to get a contract, sign the contract, and uphold them to that contract. Excuse me, upside down. So here I have a contract that I have with one of my vendors for my arches and my backdrops for my venue. So venue is also important. Please pick a place that can accommodate all of the guests that you have. Some people like outdoor weddings or indoor, but either way, it's up to you. If you decide to do a Justice of the Peace wedding, you might not necessarily need every single vendor that I mentioned, but it is good to keep in mind that maybe you'll still want a photographer for after, the courthouse, or someone to videotape you coming out of the courthouse. Totally up to you. When you're in the midst of budgeting and picking vendors, you also need to think about your guest list. This is probably the most stressful thing I've been dealing with since planning my wedding. You'll have unruly friends or family who are, excited for you and want to be there, but maybe they weren't invited. There's so many ways to address this problem, so many phrases you can use, starting with, well, we're glad you want to come, but due to the budget, we couldn't invite everyone that we wanted to be there, but we'd love to hang with you afterwards. And that makes people feel good. It makes them feel like you were thinking about them during this process. Um, Another thing is, if someone is helping you pay for the wedding, you also have to pay attention to what they want as far as the guest list. So, with the saying no pay, no say, also is if pay, then say. So, for instance, my parents and my fiance's parents are helping us to pay for the wedding. So, we need to accommodate whatever friends or family members that we might not know of at the wedding because they're footing the bill. And that's totally okay with us. Um, when you're making your guest list, you need to think about what or how people are going to feel attending your wedding. And this is where etiquette comes into play. A lot of questions that I've had is, are you going to have an open bar? Are you going to allow children to come? Are you going to, use frienders? And frienders are people that you may know that do a vendor job, such as photography, but they're still your friends. In this etiquette, I've found that people say 100% no to frienders. Your friends should be able to come to your wedding and enjoy it without feeling the need to be put to work or, risk drinking on the job. But you have to keep in mind that everyone's etiquette is different. I've heard that to have a cash bar is completely rude. Well, some people think that that's okay. I don't feel whatever way about it. I think it's perfectly fine for me to come to your wedding, and if I want a shot of whatever, to have to pay for it, especially if I know that you're a dry family. Um, Etiquette will also say that the ceremony is for the couple, but the reception is for the guests. That's another thing that I don't 100% agree with, especially if the hosts are providing so much money. I feel like that whole entire day should be about them, the ceremony and the reception. One more thing about etiquette is how you do your invitations or your registry. You never want to mention who isn't invited to the wedding, but you do want to mention, or figure out a way to say, hey, there's no kids allowed. Instead of saying, no, don't bring your kids, you could write in, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, you're cordially invited to the wedding of X, Y, and Z. And then you can just leave a space to say, 2 people are invited. How many will be attending? 1 or 2. So that's a way to get around that. Lastly, you're going to have conflict. So do your best to just diffuse the situation. Don't make permanent decisions on a temporary basis. For instance, if you have a cousin that you're extremely tight with and you get along with, and you just so happen to have a falling out before, then you need to quickly diffuse that situation. You need to say, hey, I want to still invite you, because later on you might regret not seeing them in your pictures or your videos, and that will really hurt you in the long run. So it's important to just diffuse situations as quickly as possible. With all of that being said, I hope you'll have a deeper insight for what to think about when you're planning your wedding, or what to expect and what will come up during the wedding planning process. Budget is always number one. Stay true to it. Stay on the straight and narrow, and you will get there with your vendors, with etiquette, with your guest list, all that good stuff. But even if you're not planning a wedding right now, it's something to think about. Whether it be in the far future or your near future, I hope you have a great time planning, and good luck to you. Thank you.